Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who has been waiting for me, and thank you for everyone who's been joining us on a regular basis as well for the live streams. Let's give ourselves a moment to make sure everything's up and running. Before we get into our topics that I wanted to discuss tonight, primarily the updates on the 167th day of this genocide, of this war in Gaza, and very important developments from the ground in Gaza. For those of you who are new to the live stream, I usually do these live streams primarily for my viewers, subscribers, and members to open the space up for the community to participate, share their views, ask questions, and participate also. Make your voices heard as well. So I'm going to start off with some stats tonight, really. I mean, we constantly speak about the day-to-day stuff, what's happening, but it's important to get the overall picture and image of what's happening, really. So we're on the 167th day of this genocide. 167 days, half a year of a genocide happening in front of everyone. Starvation, famine. 32,490 people killed, including 13,000 children and 8,400 women. More than 74,889 people injured, and at least 8,663 of which are children, 6,327 of which are women. Now bear in mind, some of them have very severe injuries. There's 8,000 people missing. Now, these people who are missing are most likely dead. So the death toll is north of 40,000. Israel literally destroyed or severely damaged half of Gaza's homes. So imagine you live somewhere and half of the homes are destroyed. People telling you they're attacking Hamas, right? And then they're questioning if it's a genocide or not. Half of the homes. You have 12 out of 35 hospitals. Same. Either wholly or partially destroyed. The rest are barely functioning. Only 3 to 4 somewhat functioning. What they've done to Al-Shifa Hospital is deliberate, by the way, because it's the most important medical hospital, really, across all of Palestine, including the West Bank as well. The groundwater wells, right? 83% of them are non-operational. Over 267 places of worship have been affected. They destroyed mosques, churches that are hundreds of years old, deliberately, to destroy the history, to completely destroy every single thing in Gaza. Every hour, 15 people are killed in Gaza, including 6 children. That's the stat. 35 people are injured and 42 bombs are dropped on an hourly basis. That's just in Gaza, obviously, because it's the most hit area that's going through a genocide. But in the West Bank, they killed over 453 people as well. 116 of which are children. In Gaza, over 130 journalists have been assassinated. Again, deliberately. Why? Because they don't want the truth to come out. They don't want people to know what's happening. They don't want you to know that they're committing a genocide. And they're supported by many countries, obviously. But I wanted to start off with this statistic. I think it's very important to highlight these things every now and then so that people can remember exactly the numbers that we're talking about, the level of destruction, and the fact that we're talking about a genocide. The other things that I want to talk to you about, and obviously I'll open the space up afterwards for you to participate with your questions, and I will try and address as much as possible from them, is unprecedented protests in Israel. So we've had protests since the beginning of this genocide. However, they've been increasing day by day. Now you've had unprecedented numbers of Israelis protesting, asking for Netanyahu to resign, closing main roads in Israel. Tens of thousands of people protesting, calling for Netanyahu to resign, and saying that Netanyahu is the only obstacle between them and the release of their prisoners and having a prisoner swap between Israel and the Palestinians. The second thing that I want to talk to you about is the resistance, the Palestinian resistance. So we have all of this destruction in Gaza. Israel is obviously targeting civilians, but the resistance is still there. And we've had a very important development today. We saw rockets being launched at Israel from the northern part of Gaza. When we talk about North Gaza, ladies and gentlemen, you're talking about an area that's almost been completely bulldozed. The infrastructure has been completely destroyed. Yet the Palestinian resistance is launching missiles at Israel from the northern part of Gaza. It's as if they're teasing Israel, right? You've been here half a year committing all of this, but we can still hit you. And they're also sending messages to the Israeli population and the people who have been evacuated from the areas surrounding Gaza, and Israel has a very big problem with them. They constantly ask them to return to their homes because they're paying for them. They're paying for hotels for these people, and they want them to return. However, these people are telling them, hold on a second, there's still a war going on. Hamas is still there, and there's still missiles on our kibbutzes and towns. No way, I'm not going back. So it's increasing the pressure on Israel. So it's a very serious message, really, launching missiles from the northern parts of Gaza. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and then I'll open the space up for your questions and for your comments. And if you have them, you can start sending them from now. By the way, I'll usually go back to them from the beginning, is the following. The fact that the Palestinian resistance is still strong and launching missiles even, so not engaging only in defensive measures, but also attack measures on Israeli territory, is making Israel miserable. Israel is miserable, it's defeated, it's humiliated, there's no morale, no nothing. What do? They obviously punish the civilians, but not only punish the civilians, they boast about it too, to raise the morale of a defeated nation. What do? They start posting videos of themselves on TikTok, going into people's houses, looking through women's underwear. They video themselves running over bodies, destroying things, destroying cars, civilian property, and making life miserable as much as possible for the poor people, for the poor civilians who have been suffering from this war. Yet, when we look at the Palestinian resistance, they show us that they're targeting the Israeli forces. So if we compare the two, we really look and we can really understand who's winning this war, right? If you want to talk about military to military, if you want to talk about military objectives, being reached or not, the Palestinian resistance is winning massively. And this is defeating, this is humiliating Israel to levels that you cannot really imagine, because they don't talk about it a lot. They try and do everything possible to raise the morale of this defeated nation by talking about dismantling most of the brigades of Hamas, right? 20 and 4 left in Rafah, right? So hold on. Are the brigades in Rafah operating in Khan Yunis and in North Gaza as well? Are they going after you? In which case, then the Rafah brigades are unbeatable if they can operate. But the fact of the matter is the Palestinian resistance is still intact, strong and operational all across of Gaza. And this is making Israel miserable. Really, really, they're frustrated. They're very, very frustrated. And obviously the Israeli population are fuming with Benjamin Netanyahu, because they know it's this man who's pushing to continue this genocide for his own sake. But it's not only, and again, that's very important, it's not only Benjamin Netanyahu who's committing this genocide, it's the state of Israel as it has been since its establishment. A supremacist, genocidal, violent ideology of Zionism that was established on ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people. This is what they've done in 1948. This is what they've done in 1967. In between, this is what they've done during the massacres across all of Palestine. And this is what they constantly do in the West Bank. They systematically try and expel people from their lands. They systematically steal people's properties. They systematically abuse people and make their lives miserable because of their violent supremacist ideology. That's why we call them a satanic death cult. This is how they are. Although some people criticize me and say Satan would be ashamed if you say satanic death cult. They've put Satan himself to shame with what they're committing in Gaza. So this was the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about, really, as an introduction. And now I'll open the space up for all of you to participate, share your thoughts, questions, and I will do my best to try and address all of them. For all of you who are joining us, as and when, welcome to the live stream, and also feel free to participate in the conversation, and I will do my best to reach out to all of your comments and questions in this live stream. And obviously, welcome to everyone joining in and saying hi. Let's try and go to the first question here. ABCD, Al-Shifa is supposed to be one of the oldest hospitals in Gaza. Yes, it's one of the oldest hospitals in Gaza, and it's the most important medical facility. So it's the most important hospital in North Gaza and in Gaza altogether, but it provides very crucial services for the northern parts of Gaza. But it's the most important facility, medical facility across all of Palestine. So when you talk about even hospitals in the West Bank and hospitals all across, really, Al-Shifa is very, very important. That's why they've been after it. But they're facing resistance around Al-Shifa, by the way, for those of you who haven't noticed, really. They're facing massive resistance around it, whether through attacking their tanks and bulldozers and forces and special units hiding in residential buildings. That's why they're after it, because they want to make Gaza uninhabitable. They want to kill every sign of life, every thing that's providing any type of service, really. That's why they assassinated these police officers who are in charge of distributing and who have been able to successfully allow aid into the northern parts of Gaza, because they want to kill the people. They want to starve them to death. They want people to think that we can no longer live here. This place is not to be lived in. Why? So they can flee, so that they can complete the genocide, and so that the sadistic maniacs, the settlers, can come in and build new homes with a sea view, as they're declaring. Imagine, imagine what type of mentality you must have to want to go and build a property over a bombed place where people lived and were killed and went through misery. Imagine what type of people we're talking about. These are the people who are living in the West Bank. These are the people who live in many parts of Israel. And these are the people running this war. You're dealing with this type of mentality. Imagine these types of people. Imagine the level of sadism and psychopathy and narcissism and supremacy and racism and hate. Would you want to do that with anyone? If you want to go and buy a house or live in a house and someone tells you, oh, it was destroyed and bombed and now we're selling it because we stole it, you'd be put off immediately. Any decent person would be. Not them. They want to destroy everything so that they can live, and they will have building plans on the rubble. They have 3D versions of them that they posted, by the way, they published, and they showed it digital. Everything is digital. The houses, how they're going to be, sea view, and the rubble underneath them. This is the type of people, these are the type of people we're dealing with. Ansarullah saying, Ralph Nader wrote a report indicating over 200,000 people were murdered in Gaza. Corpses and rubble built the death pier, poisons in the soil. No one can grow food in Gaza anymore. True. Well, look, we believe the reports that are coming from the official government in Gaza. And so far, they said 33,000 approximately, right? Just over 32,000, 8,000 missing. Let's say the missing are dead. You're talking about 40,000. 200,000 could potentially be the number if this continues and if there's famine. And it's probably a projection, but I don't think that that's an accurate number, because if it was the number, why wouldn't they tell you? The government in Gaza, the authorities, and to them it would show Israel in an even worse manner. But every death is documented. That's why they even say 8,000 missing, not dead. Why? Because they need to see the body, verify it. All of this takes place. And with the medical condition and with the situation in the hospitals, it's very difficult to verify deaths sometimes. But I think it's far-fetched, 200,000. I hope we won't reach these levels. And I think it's overstretched, really, way overstretched. Hamid Sadiqi, dear Mahmoud, salam alaikum wa rahmatullah. Wish you all the best, luck and healthy life. Do what you do strongly. We love you much here in Iran. God bless you. God bless you as well, and all of the people of Iran and all of the people listening to me and viewing all across the world. Much love and respect back. And all of you, I hope you stay blessed. Safiya Na'mani, what is the pier being constructed by the US for? Yeah, this pier is very ambiguous. It's very, very suspicious, really. They've been building it, saying that they want to allow aid into Gaza. However, you have thousands of aid trucks waiting on land. Why don't you open them and allow them in? It's very suspicious, especially coming from America and supported by Israel, because you need to remember this is coordinated by Israel. Yoav Gallant himself, the Israeli defense minister, said, we support the idea of the floating pier, and it's there to undermine the rule of Hamas in Gaza. So what's worrying them now with the aid is that because they want to kill the UNRWA, because they want to make the UNRWA dysfunctional, this leaves no option but for Hamas to deliver the goods when it comes to aid, because usually when the aid comes in through Rafah or through other organizations, the UNRWA, the United Nations organization that's primarily for refugees, for the Palestinian refugees, that has been established because Israel ethnically cleansed the Palestinians and operates in Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, the areas that have the biggest numbers of Palestinian refugees. Israel wants to destroy it. And they were in charge of delivering all of the aid to the Gazan population. Now, okay, you don't want the UN. You bomb UN aid trucks, you bombed UN schools and places that refugees are sheltering in, and you don't want Hamas to deliver them. There's no option but Hamas to deliver them. What do you mean? But again, like they're saying, they want to undermine Hamas. And it's not the only thing that they've been trying, this pier, by the way, even though they haven't been able to get anyone to get the aid in apart from Hamas yet. So they have multiple ideas, right? And suggestions and plans. One of them is the tribes that I spoke about in Gaza. And by the way, this goes back to an idea that was implemented by and brought to light by an Israeli thinker and analyst called Mordechai Kedar. Mordechai Kedar had a proposal to create an emirate state for the Palestinian people. His whole idea is based on a supremacist, colonialist, racist approach. Why? Because to him, the mentality of the Palestinian people is tribal. They've always operated as tribes. So let's not give them a state. Let's give more powers to tribes in Palestine and make emirates. This big family will have an emirate here, 4 to 5 emirates in Gaza, 10 to 12 in Hebron, because this is how they were historically. Imagine how racist and supremacist this approach is, and how backward, by the way, and ignorant at the same time, and malicious. But the idea was there. They started to try to implement this through this aid, by the way. And you need to connect the dots. So they're saying we don't want a Palestinian state. They clearly say that. Netanyahu says that. Yair Lapid says that. The opposition says that. Everyone in Israel says that. We don't want a Palestinian state. Everyone who at least has some sort of level of power. So what's the alternative then? Israel having a full control, full security control. Well, how are you going to have full security control with so many Palestinians in without giving them equal rights? You create this tribal system that's almost similar to having like a Palestinian majority town in Israel with a council with some sort of powers. And they deal with Israel, obviously, from a security perspective. But that failed miserably. Why? The tribes in Gaza, they went out in a joint statement, said that this is treason. And everyone who engages with Israel is a traitor. And we only deal with the democratically elected authority in Gaza. Who's democratically elected in Gaza? Hamas. But they don't like telling you that here. And not only that, Jimmy Carter himself, the previous US president, he monitored the elections in Palestine, ladies and gentlemen, published a very thorough report saying that these were the most democratic elections in the Arab world's history, right? But no, they'll tell you they took it by control after a military. Well, they had a military coup against them. Obviously, they're going to have to protect themselves. Highlights all of the hypocrisy and the double standards, really, and how they don't like democracy when it brings people who they don't like. Selective democracy, blind democracy, right? Whenever they don't want something, they'll make every single excuse under the sun. So the pier is one of those things. It's still not working. The most recent thing we're hearing is this idea of a multinational force. Right. Initially, it was countries internationally. Then they spoke about Arab states, and now the short list is 3 Arab states that haven't been named yet. However, they're not talking about the Palestinian resistance, Hamas, and what they think. They call the shots in Gaza. The Palestinian people, not Israel, and no one else will call the shots but the Palestinian people of Gaza. Why? Because that's democracy. That's the rule of the people. That's the power of the people. This is how it should go. So they're struggling now. And they're selling these delusions to make themselves feel better, by the way. They're selling delusions to make themselves feel better. And that, oh yeah, we're talking about the day after in Gaza, whereas the day after we should be talking about in Israel. So this Pierre just highlights the hypocrisy and absurdity. Really, you have a culprit who's preventing the aid from going in. Go and target them, right? Go and enforce action against them. You have the power to form a coalition, a military coalition, right? But you formed a coalition to go and support the lifeline for this genocide state. Instead of forming a coalition to go and enforce action against the genocide state. But we live in states that have a history of genocide, mass genocide, by the way. What's Israel doing in Gaza is nothing compared to what these previous colonial powers have done all across the world, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Latin America. To them, again, what Israel's doing in Gaza is peanuts. People need to remember that. And they're only paying lip service to what's happening. Douglas Boone, again, about the Pierre, for deportation, depopulation could well be, or it could also be linked to getting international forces that are linked to the US and allied with Israel in, could be to deport people. But again, listen, the people are awake. It's not as if they are unaware of what is being prepared for them. It's not as if they have trust in them. Look, the hundreds of thousands of people in North Gaza, why are they still there? Someone needs to ask that question. Why are they still there? It's because they know if they flee, it's very likely that Israel will never allow them back. One of the main things, one of the main conditions of Hamas during the ceasefire negotiations is for Israel to allow people to go back to the north of Gaza. And the Israeli delegation stated a couple of times over 3 weeks ago that they are surprised by the stubbornness of Hamas regarding the clause to get the Palestinian people back to the northern part of Gaza. Why is that? It's because they know what's being prepared for them. You're talking about a place with 75% refugee population. Gaza, before the 7th of October, 72+% of them are refugees. Refugees from where? From areas that Israel occupied in 1948 and 1967 and expelled their population from. So do we think they're that naive that they're going to leave their homes and believe Israel when it tells them, oh, you're going to be allowed to go back? No way in hell. That's why they're still there. So if there would be any plans for the people or for those powers to deport people, in this period, the Palestinian people would be awake and they're ready for it. And they already have a counter move for it as well. Mimi, AIA, are there any updates on the super fungal infections that killed several soldiers? How is it affecting Gazans? Okay. We haven't had many reports about these infections for the Gazan population. However, it could obviously be there. but it's spreading like wildfire within the Israeli army. And some of them cannot be treated. Although people who suffer from these things, they are immediately evacuated and treated. They're sent in helicopters to Israeli hospitals, some of the most advanced hospitals in Israel, Sheba or whatever. But some of them, they're resistant to like antibiotics and advanced medication. So they're frustrated. What the hell is happening? It's like some sort of a punishment coming for them that's not treatable. But it's increasing. Some of them spread like wildfire. Some diseases within the Israeli army were not seen before, as confirmed by Israeli hospitals and people in the medical field in Israel. ABCD again about the pier. Pier is also a precursor for a permanent port to explore offshore gas deposits. That could be something, however, it's less likely because gas fields, obviously, it's a bigger thing, bigger project, but you don't really rule out anything when it comes to these people. The gas exploration contracts were handed out 2 weeks into the war. Imagine. You're supposedly in an attack that you haven't been faced with before, and all you're worried about is handing out gas exploration contracts. That's a bit suspicious, isn't it? It's as if it was pre-planned. It was done after the 20th of October, just after the 20th of October. They handed out gas exploration, clearly signaling that there was a serious plan there before the 7th of October, and someone knew something. Ansarullah said, Miko Pellet said Israel is not losing. Israel wins for every Palestinian they kill. He said no one can build a coalition besides Netanyahu, and 55% majority of Likud means they will never stop. Agree? Well, to be honest with you, I haven't heard that from Miko Pellet. I personally think Miko Pellet has very interesting statements and points of view when it comes to Israel. If he did say that, obviously, I haven't been able to verify it, but if he did say that, I would disagree. I would respectfully disagree. Why? Because when you judge a war, when you say he's victorious and he's a loser, how do you judge that? By the war objectives. What are the war objectives? Israel's declared war objectives are demolishing the Hamas, returning the prisoners, and making Gaza a place that poses no threat for Israel. Have they accomplished any of these things? No. That means they're losing the war. The Palestinians, only by surviving, are winning. I'll tell you that. Only by surviving, they're winning. Military to military capabilities, they're hitting them, they're obliterating them, they're demolishing them. Israel is causing a lot of destruction. They are committing a genocide against the civilians. I had a guest on my podcast the other day, and he said even if Israel kills all of the people in Gaza or commits the genocide and ethnic cleansing, Hamas will remain. Why? Because they're in the tunnels. They're in the tunnels. They're waiting for them. What do you mean you can take out everyone? The Palestinian resistance will stay there. And you'll have no clue where they are, even with your most advanced weapons. So I respectfully disagree with that. I think the Palestinian resistance is giving them a hell of a beating and is humiliating them. And the 7th of October and what Israel's facing now, they've never faced it before, not by any army, not by any power. And it's from these people, this resistance in Gaza. And it's very telling. that they're facing this from the people who suffered most from them. That's very, very telling. These are the most people with most deprivation, most poverty, who faced most injustice, most trauma, most losses. Isn't it funny that they're the same people giving Israel a bit of a taste of what they've done for them, albeit in all of their limited capabilities? And with regards to the majority of the Likud party, by the way, the polls are showing that Benny Gantz will win. And Benny Gantz would be able to form a coalition, including with people who are currently allied with Benjamin Netanyahu, excluding, obviously, only Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. Deep 007 is their new ceasefire talks. The Israeli delegation withdrew. They're saying Hamas's conditions are unreasonable. What's unreasonable? That they want a commitment from Israel to stop the genocide, withdraw from Gaza, allow all aid in, all food in, let the people go back to the north of Gaza, rebuild Gaza, and provide temporary housing in the hundreds of thousands for people, long-term temporary housing up until they rebuild Gaza. It takes a long time, right? After all this destruction. And then a prisoner swap. To Israel, that's unreasonable. And again, when a psychopathic lunatic tells you something's unreasonable, then, But they obviously took out their delegation. Primarily, again, all of this is done by Netanyahu. Netanyahu himself said the other day, by the way, just 2 days ago, I'm running the negotiations myself. Imagine how much of a lunatic maniac this person is. You're a prime minister. You have a delegation negotiating. You give guidelines, and you let people who you put your trust in, supposedly, who have the background, who have the professional background, whether it's military, intelligence, or whatever it is, to do their job. But he's not trusting anyone. He's sending some of his assistants to monitor the head of the Mossad. The head of the Mossad is supposed to be the closest person to the prime minister historically in Israel. And he's a person usually that the Israeli establishment holds a lot of respect for. But he's not letting people do their job. He's not giving them flexibility. And he's micromanaging everything. It's as if he's an obsessive manager running this cult of a company, right? But people are aware of that. More and more people in Israel are aware of that and are speaking up against it. That's why in the recent protests in Israel, they said Netanyahu is the only obstacle between them and reaching a ceasefire deal. The question is, how much longer will Israel be able to continue this genocide with this impunity? So far, the ICJ told you, stop committing acts of genocide. The International Court for Justice, the most important court in the world, they recently told you, ordered you, allow medical aid and food aid in. But they are disregarding everything they have to say. Why? Because they have impunity. Until when? My opinion, until they taste some sort of force, some sort of enforcement. They need to feel what they do to stop. Not just talks, not just income paper, not just legislations. But it just really shows you we live in the law of the jungle, really. I mean, the law of the jungle is even more merciful. What are we talking about? Francis Fitzgerald, thank you so much for your super thanks. Okay, let's go to your next question. Still punk AF, you can't build a holy land on the mass graves of other people's children. That's so true. That is so true. Go explain it to those maniacs, though. Shannon L, can you talk about Land Day? Yeah, I can talk briefly about the Land Day. It's a day where it's a kind of a day where they commemorate the protest that took place. If I recall, it was in the 71, early 70s, and some of them were inside of what's modern day Israel or historical Palestine. And on this day, many people go back, the Palestinians in Israel, particularly occupied Palestine. Many of them, and I participated in some of these days as well previously, they go to destroyed villages that were ethnically cleansed in 1948 to pay respect for the people who were evacuated from their homes and to show obviously solidarity and that we still remember what happened on this land. Although we live here now, but some people have been expelled from here, but we remember what happened to them. And Israel doesn't like it. They try and obviously put pressure on people. They ban them from visiting certain locations, but they fail constantly. Okay, let me remind you of something. Israel came up with a law, I think it was in around 2011, banning commemorating the Nakba. Talk about democracy. You're not allowed to commemorate the Nakba, the catastrophe. Imagine, Avigdor Lieberman at the time, he proposed it, and it passed, and it's law in Israel. But the Palestinians inside of Israel, they don't listen to it. They obviously continue and protest and commemorate and talk. Least we can do. Sheena Nolan. Do you think the ultra-Orthodox will be conscripted? No, but they are applying more pressure. Like they cut the funding of some of the yeshivas, they call them. As of the 1st of April, they won't receive state funding. So they're punishing them financially. So they'll try and use carrot and stick with them. And I'm sure they will try and offer some money to religious leadership. But we've had one of the major rabbis in Israel saying that it will never happen. I spoke about the threat from one of the leaders of the religious Sephardi community, more like the Easterners. He said that if we will be faced with conscription, we will leave in our masses. You're talking about a 1.2 million community when you already have over 3 million fleeing the country, right? But it shows the desperation. It shows the defeat. It shows how many people are wounded and injured and cannot go to war. It shows how many people fled the country. It shows how many people don't want to fight for Netanyahu and don't believe in this genocide. So they're getting from worse to worse, really, from bad to worse. Wildlife matters. With many moderate Israelis leaving and the settlers being armed, is it even possible for them to reverse direction without a civil war? Very interesting question, because, you know, with more Israelis who have more liberal views leaving Israel, and with this increase in racism, the general racism and the general supremacy and this poisonous racism, it's difficult to see a light in terms of change or hope for change when it comes to Israel. There's an argument that many people say and speak about, which is if there were no Palestinians in between the Israelis, they'll fight themselves to death. But they divert the attention on the Palestinian people. They thought they can do it successfully and unite the nation after the massive really almost civil war after the judicial reform attempts. That didn't work. Israel's more divided than ever, on a societal level, on a political level, on a military level, on all levels. Country's completely split. And the baffling thing here, and I spoke about this a very long time ago, you have a perfect recipe for a regime change, a forced regime change from outside, right? If a monkey breaks his arm in Iran, they'll call for a regime change tomorrow. If a cat goes blind in a state that the US doesn't like, they'll say they are living under dictatorship and we need to kick the government out. But if Israel commits a genocide and kills over 32,000 people, they'll question the definition of genocide. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what it means, genocide, right? But they're headed for civil war. Look, we've had elements of civil war. We've had brigades fighting in the army. You had people refusing to serve in the army. You have people using more and more violent means of protesting. You have massive conflicts and splits in the war cabinet, in the military leadership, in the political leadership. The thing is, for it to practically work well, the other side needs to show that they are open for a complete and total democracy and equality for everyone. Like the criticism that the protests received in Israel after the judicial reform attempts by Benjamin Netanyahu is the fact that they do not include the Palestinian people. So they want democracy for the Jews, not for the Palestinians. They still want to complete the Jewish supremacy, and they don't want this equality for the Palestinians. So and then they said, why some of the Palestinians are not protesting? So it's like, why do you want me to protest? Well, to support ethnocracy and supremacy for you, right? Against me. And many people, some people, not many people, criticize Israel, saying, how do you think this can work really when you're committing the same thing against the Palestinian people? You're worried about Israel turning into dictatorship and people suffering. Well, there's military rule against the Palestinians in the West Bank. There's apartheid in Israel, and Gaza is under blockade. So what are you expecting exactly? We might see a civil war. Irma Galvan, thank you so much for your super. You said, I read on Politico that the Palestinian Authority is ready to make changes or pay to slay program. Do you know about this and can you explain? I actually haven't heard about it, but what I do know is that the Palestinian Authority is there to serve Israel, not the Palestinian people. Why? Because they went into negotiations with Israel over 30 years ago. Why? To establish a Palestinian state. During those 30 years, Israel showed them clearly that they're not interested in having a Palestinian state, expanding the settlements, killing more people, stealing more land, building more walls. So if you look about it from a rational perspective, let's say you have a business and you're trying to make business with someone and he's promising you X amount a year. So the first year you give me nothing, second year nothing, third year you go completely against the agreement, fourth year you're continuing to rob me and cheat on me. What the hell? You either must be stupendously ignorant to continue doing so, or you're aligned with him to serve him. And I tend to believe the latter. You're there to serve them because you haven't brought anything good for the Palestinian people, plain and simple. And it's increasingly getting worse. Your path hasn't led to a Palestinian state, the thing that you call for. and work for. And you work against anyone who chooses a different path, primarily Hamas and the PIJ. You're not even allowing them into the PLO, right? You're not able to work in harmony with them, to say, okay, listen, I'll deal with the political stuff, you deal with the resistance. What does that mean? You're there to serve Israel. That's the harsh truth. Kashmiri vlogs, interesting question. Salam Habibi, do you think they will think of using force to make the IOF adhere to the instructions of the Security Council regarding humanitarian aid getting through borders by opening all borders? Look, this is what should happen. If you look at it from a rational perspective, this is what must happen. Why? Because the UNSC, they came up with a resolution, ceasefire, immediate ceasefire. And you have the ICJ saying you must allow aid in immediately. If it's not enforced, then, rest in peace, the international system. It's really rest in peace completely. It's completely pointless. Don't talk to me about the UN anymore. And again, look, we know that. Like, Israel always disregarded UN resolutions. They always disregarded international law. And you have people within the legal field really saying the same things, people who are qualified, who criticize Israel throughout their history. Yet they can get away with it. If they don't enforce anything, then that will just send a message that we only understand force, and it gives a backwind for people who are resisting this international system. So if you're running the international system, which is corrupt, but you want to make it survive, right? And not deemed to be, as it truly is, a complete facade serving US interests primarily, then you need to do something and try and sell it to the people as if it's something sufficient. If not, that will give a backwind to the resistance. It'll give a backwind to everyone who you don't like. I'm speaking about Western power perspective. It'll give backwind to everyone, all of the resistance movement, all of the regimes, not the regimes, sorry, all of the countries opposing you, everyone who you don't like. So you have to do something. If not, it won't be good on you. Okay, Miguel Garcia, resistance fighters seem to have enough with the PA. Do you think this could escalate in the West Bank anytime soon so we can get rid of PA and Abbas? Their position is the weakest among all parties. Look, the resistance, the armed resistance, did not stop in the West Bank. It continues on an ongoing basis. However, it's still pretty much in check to a certain degree. I mean, the level of force that Israel used in the West Bank in the last 5 months hasn't been done for approximately 20 years. Like airstrikes. Usually you'll have special forces, this and that, but airstrikes, the level of invasion, the tanks and everything, clearly showing that there is resistance. And also there were signs that members of some of the security forces in the Palestinian Authority were working with the Palestinian resistance. You might see reports sometimes also that the Palestinian Authority acts against the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank, which is true, and sometimes they imprison them. But it's very tense. it could potentially escalate. And, you know, all of that side is raging at the moment. You have lots of protests in Jordan as well. And when it comes to the West Bank and Jordan, they're very important and they're very tied together, because the lifeline of the West Bank is Jordan as well. If there won't be any solution anytime soon, it's risking escalation. And you had the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, sending warnings to all of the leaders of the military and the political leadership and intelligence leadership 1.5 months ago that things are about to escalate and could potentially escalate if we continue having this approach with the West Bank. Because don't forget, Israel's preventing them from working in Israel. Israel used to provide work permits for many in the West Bank to work in Israel. It stopped doing so after the 7th of October. And that creates even more tensions that the Israeli defense minister was against heavily, and he criticized it. But Netanyahu and the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, imagine who's the finance minister, they started like saying, oh, you're gonna have a difficult Ramadan, you're not gonna be allowed to work or make money or whatever. So they know if they punish them financially as well, Yoav Gallant and some other people in Israel, that you will increase the likelihood of more violence. Yet Netanyahu is pressing ahead with it, and you're seeing more violence. And back then, Yoav Gallant's argument was, we will have to take out forces from Gaza to deal with the situation in the West Bank. And if they're not succeeding in Gaza with all of the forces now, how on earth will they have any likelihood or any chance of succeeding if they take some of the forces out and put them in the West Bank? Shannon L., are you receiving any threats for your advocacy? Just curious. Look, no blunt threats. You know, some people can say a couple of words here and there in the comment section or whatever. Nothing official, really. What I am receiving, though, I do think there are deliberate actions against my work here on YouTube. People try and manipulate things with my channel, and there are internal problems and issues that I'm facing within YouTube itself. Clearly, not many people like what we're promoting, although what we're promoting is very simple: equality, freedom, democracy, and justice. What's so difficult about that? And if something is clear as daylight, I'll call it as it is. If Israel's committing a genocide, I'll tell you Israel's committing a genocide. If the Palestinian people have a right to resist, I'll tell you they have a right to resist. Clear. No problem. And if people have a problem with that, let them have a problem with that. I'm not here to please people or seek approval from anyone. I'm going to say it as it is. I'm going to say what I believe firmly. I believe that I promote a humanitarian solution. I wrote a book called One State, right? Manifesto, 2048, a manifesto for the one-state solution, Israel and Palestine, promoting equality for Israelis and Palestinians. If people have a problem with that, then you have a problem with equality. Then you have a problem with justice and peace. So they need to question themselves. The thing is, many of these people who have these ideologies also have power. And they have power in the media, and they have power in money, and they have power in government. But so long as I am able, I will act, regardless of where, when, and how. So I hope that gives you a bit of a glimpse. Also from Shannon, you hear about the Israeli detained in Malaysia. Interesting. Yeah, and they were many detained in Turkey as well, and other countries too. They operate globally, obviously. I heard it was like a Mossad network, I think, or something. Dispossessed diasporic. Hi, Mahmoud. I admire your analysis and always look forward to your integral perspectives. Thank you for that. Could you comment on Israel's attacks on Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq all in one day? That isn't unprecedented. Israel did that before. They did multiple attacks on many countries in one day. As a matter of fact, Israel carried out hundreds, if not thousands, of attacks on Syria, and they constantly invade Lebanon's airspace with or without war. And it's been going on for decades. Yet they get no criticism for doing that, for invading independent sovereign nations and attacking and killing people there. They're not, for example, labeled as a terrorist state for doing that. I wonder why, right? They constantly attack in Syria. Oh, it's because they support Hezbollah. What do you mean? You get support from the US, you get weapons from countries. Why are they not allowed to get weapons for themselves? Typical, arrogance, right? And entitlement. I can attack because it's my security. It's defensive. They call them the Israeli Defense Forces. Defending what? You're attacking every nation under the sun. That's threatening you at the slightest. You're an expansionist, racist, neo-colonial entity. That's what you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't have invaded Lebanon. You wouldn't have occupied Lebanon before. You wouldn't have invaded Egypt. You wouldn't have occupied Sinai. You wouldn't have invaded the West Bank and Gaza. You wouldn't have invaded Palestine altogether, right? But it just highlights how much they are an expansionist neo-colonial entity that isn't just pleased with one part, which strengthens the notion that they do have plans for what is called the Greater Israel, between the Nile to the Euphrates. So it's not unprecedented. They will obviously attack. And you won't hear criticism in mainstream media. Oh, hold on a second. The state is attacking every state next to it. We have a problem. Oh, no, they'll tell them they have a right to defend themselves. Imagine how absurd. And ignorant people, some ignorant people fall into the trap, that they're defending themselves. Raylan, man, is Egypt going to retaliate in Rafah? If it's the case, is Egypt doing propaganda to the Western world? Look, Egypt is one of the main contributors after the Palestinian resistance to the delay in the action in Rafah. Why? Because they countered measures. Don't forget, it was Egypt who took the stance of refusing to allow all of the Palestinians in Sinai in the beginning of this genocide, because this was the plan, and immense pressure was being put on Egypt to let the Palestinians in. They were clear on that. So obviously, with our criticism of what's happening in Rafah, the fact that it's not enough, and many other criticisms of Egypt and other Arab states, one thing that goes for Egypt is the fact that they refused to budge when they were under immense pressure during the beginning of the genocide to completely open everything and allow all of the Palestinian refugees in, because Israel wouldn't have allowed them to return to Gaza, and Egypt was aware of that. That's why back then the Egyptian president told Israel, if you are so concerned about the Palestinian population, you have the Negev desert, massive deserts, Naqab. Get the Palestinians in until you finish with your operation. And if you want to, then allow them back in Gaza. If you want to get them back in Gaza. And he said, if you want to, because some of them are from these occupied territories. But Israel obviously doesn't want them because they don't want to deal with them. Why? Because they are an ethnocracy. They are a supremacist state. That's why. Zach, Mahmoud, did you hear about the Reuters journalists getting killed? Syria, Lebanon. What do you think they will use as an excuse? Look, they don't need an excuse. They can use anything as an excuse, really. They've gone away with killing over 130 journalists in Gaza, killing over 32,000 people. They don't need excuses, these people. They'll either ignore it, or they will say he was a terrorist, or he was a sympathizer, or he was covering up for this or that. This is what they've done with some of the journalists they killed in Lebanon, for example. This is what they say about all of the journalists in Gaza. Oh, they are Hamas members acting as journalists. Yeah, more like you don't want the real image to get out to the real world. You just want your propaganda and lies because you only thrive in the darkness. And when there's light on you, you start to get burnt. That's why. But they don't need excuses, these people. They can get away with things internationally, really. Dr. N. Asghar, Assalamu alaikum, Mahmoud. The hearts of the Pakistani people beats with the Palestinian people, just like the Jordanian people. But the government is with the American government. What is the solution? Firstly, yes, and the Pakistani people are some of the most supportive people of Palestine. I know that. And the situation is really like that on a global scale, isn't it? So even if you talk about Pakistan, Jordan, many Arab states, some European countries, the UK, the US, the American people, many of them share the same views of supporting this, but the government is against it. What is the solution? There are solutions, not one solution. But one of the main things is you shortlist what's within your power. What's your capability? What can you do? Like, one thing we can do is talk. We're talking. We're highlighting. We're saying what's happening. If you change someone's mind, good. That's a very important thing. Don't underestimate anything that you do, even if the government is against it. Because previous things that we enjoy, rights that we enjoy at the moment, privileges that we enjoy at the moment, they didn't come out of nowhere. They came with sacrifice. Lots of sacrifice. End of slavery, workers' rights, women's rights, all of these things that took a lot of sacrifice. And the more people speak, the more people act, the more people protest, the more people take action, the more there is likelihood of those people in power to listen. And look, there are people in power who have some sort of a functioning moral compass. That's why you have resignations. Why are people resigning from the US administration? Why this recent lady, what was her name? Shalene, I think. She resigned. Why did Josh Paul resign from the US administration previously? Because some of these people, they do actually have an ounce of humanity. So what me and you are doing, what people are doing, it doesn't matter how little you might think it is, it's good, because that's what you are capable of. And continue to do it, and don't get demoralized, and don't expect immediate results as well. I always say that many people expect things to change immediately. Don't expect things to change immediately. Things take time to change, but the most important thing is to remain active and not be apathetic. Even if we have some sort of a ceasefire, right? What do you think? It shouldn't go ahead like nothing happened, because you still have a state able to commit such an atrocity there. And you have the same people in power in other countries supporting them. That should ring 1,000, 1 million alarm bells to everyone. So we continue our job and don't stop until we start seeing changes. Let's go to the next question. Deep 007 again. Why did Israel just strike Syria? Well, they said that they're targeting commanders in Hezbollah. They're attacking supply lines that come from Iran to Hezbollah, and they constantly attack any sort of threat source to Israel. That's why they attack Syria. It's like, I don't know, England attacking France for supplying something to another country. And that goes on like nothing when it comes to Israel. And again, they constantly do it, right? The question is, until when, really? And Sabia Hamid and Ada AR, thank you so much for your supers. Ida AR is saying, I understand there are Palestinians living in Tel Aviv. How did they get to live there while the rest are stuck in open-air prison in Gaza? Are they protesting too? Well, you have the Palestinians who were born in Israel, who Israel refers to as Arab Israelis, and some people refer to as Arab Israelis. You have Palestinians living in the West Bank. You have Palestinians living in Gaza. In terms of protests, some of them are. However, Israel took severe measures against the Palestinian citizens of Israel since this genocide began. And they punished many of them for very basic things, such as basic shows of sympathy, likes, shares, posts, anything of the sort. So do not mistake these people with the population of Gaza. Obviously, our ethnic background is the same, but you're born in a different place. Like the Palestinians who are born in Israel have an Israeli nationality, right? The population who were born in the West Bank, they have a West Bank Palestinian Authority document. Those who are born in Gaza, they have a Gaza or authority passport. It gets even more complicated. The East Jerusalem population, they have a residence document that doesn't give them full rights. The non-Jewish population in the Golan Heights, they hold a laissez-passer to travel, and they have no identity or nationality. Because to them, Golan, Al-Julan, belongs to Syria. And they don't want to recognize Israel's authority. In return, they're stateless. I know it can be complicated for some people. That's the reality. Okay, let's see if we have some more questions. Jihad Al-Aidi, thank you so much for your generosity with your super thanks. I really, really appreciate that. And Muthi, you said, Mahmoud, your courage and genius are remarkable. Thank you for your advocacy, and thank you, and all of you. I hope I'm not missing anything. I try and reach kind of all of your main questions, really. Okay. Conrad Jones, have you considered doing Rumble as well? Yes, I already have a Rumble account, and clearly them and YouTube are not on the same page. So YouTube, they used to sync all of the videos with Rumble automatically. Soon as I started growing on YouTube, they stopped syncing it. And the systems in Rumble are not as advanced as YouTube. But clearly, they don't want things growing with Rumble. To me, I'm focusing on YouTube at the moment. If it continues, and I face a lot of problems. Like I think there are things that are against people with similar messages to myself. It's not like me directly, right? I don't like to talk about it too much, though. And I raise things with YouTube too. And listen, from my perspective, I try and channel my content not in too many locations. Okay? If I won't see, any point, for example, or I would see it more beneficial that, look, Rumble needs to be my thing, I'll switch to Rumble. Simple. For the moment, I'm still on YouTube mainly. And, worst case scenario, I can post from my website or whatever. Doesn't matter. You can start posting videos on your own website too. But at the moment, I'm on YouTube. Most of my videos are on YouTube. That's what I'm focusing on. And maybe at some point I will try and diversify or make exclusive content for Rumble, by the way. I haven't reached that stage yet. But if I do, I will obviously notify all of my followers and viewers. Jack Ayub, my father used to say that when they took our land with power, you have to regain it with power. There's no negotiating with these people. I tend to agree with that. Zach is saying, Mahmoud, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu will make a speech to the Congress in the US, and when he does, it will be past Biden bedtime? I mean, to be fair, I don't know how someone like Joe Biden is allowed to be a president. Person proved many times that he doesn't have capacity. He needs to be helped with his speech, where he goes, where he doesn't go. But it just shows and highlights really what the position of the United States president is. And the thought of it is scary, really, that you have someone sitting there who acts as nothing but a front to the people, sitting and making decisions. But saying that his situation with Biden is really bad, by the way, you need to understand it's been there for a very long time. It's not something new. Netanyahu and Biden, they haven't been seeing eye to eye for a very, very, very long time. Okay, let's see if you have any more questions. Jack Ayub, as a Palestinian, I don't want to negotiate the 67 lines. I want to take back 48. It was Palestine. Totally. And my argument here is that we have a reality now, right? And you have Israelis, this generation, that generation have been living there. The easiest, most simple, straightforward solution, equality. Everyone is equal. If someone has a problem with equality, go live in an island and implement supremacy on yourself. But yes, and I constantly had a problem with the two-state solution. Always had a problem with it. Why? Because what about the 1948 refugees? 750,000 people expelled by terrorist activities from their homes, from these Zionist militias, and then you tell them, what, no, you have no right to return? This was my home. I was born there. I have the keys to my home, many of them. Okay. Nasimul Khan, with regards to how the situation is escalating in the countries around Israel, do you think they are aiming to form a greater Israel? Listen, you have people in power who so believe in the greater Israel. Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, he's one of those people. He had a conference in France. On his deck, on his speech deck, he had a map of greater Israel stretching to Jordan and other parts of Arab nations. People who noticed it criticized it, right? But they have plans. It's not like they don't have plans. They have plans that they've had them for a very, very long time. It's not recent. So they have plans, and I think the countries surrounding Israel are aware of these plans. Mario and Tim, what do you think about Norman Finkelstein? Yeah, I've known Norman Finkelstein from a very long time ago, from 2006, I think. And he's one of those people, obviously has a Jewish background, Holocaust survivor, similar to many people who have Jewish background, Holocaust survivors, and very vocal and advocate. And they support the Palestinian cause. They criticize Israel heavily. Any decent human being would do that, regardless of his religious background. But particularly with people from the Jewish community, I think it would take more bravery, because you're kind of opposing a country that is supposedly speaking in the name of Judaism. But if I was in that position, I'd do the same thing. Like if a Muslim country was speaking in the name of Islam and committing atrocities against other people, I'd be fuming. I was like, hey, hold on a second, don't talk on behalf of me. You don't represent my religion, right? And they should. And more people are, including Norman Finkelstein. He's been speaking about it for a very, very long time. Okay, looks like we have a last couple of questions. Let me try and address them and then we can wrap up. Another one is, again, it's about the pier. 19 event horizon 66. Hi, Mahmoud Jan. Do you think the pier will come under attack from the resistance? It can come under attack from the resistance if the resistance feels like this pier definitely has bad intentions. It might come under attack, but so far, again, it's ambiguous. There's no clarity. You know, who's going to deliver the goods, who's going to take them down. You destroyed the infrastructure. And lots of questions, really. What about the aid that's on the land? Why don't you allow it in, right? And yeah, that's about it for the questions. So let's wrap it up here, guys. 1.5 hours almost of a nice live stream with you. Thank you, everyone who joined me. Thank you for everyone who contributed. Apologies if I missed some of your input. Again, if you're new to my live streams, I try and do them regularly. And I usually try and notify in advance. To be fair, today I posted like an hour before, so excuse me if I do. I mean, if you look on my channel, you'll probably find me in the evening at some point. That's when I'll usually post either a video or a podcast or a live stream or a combination. But thank you so much for joining me. And I will hopefully see you soon. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, day, night, depending on where you are. Thank you so much. And I'll see you soon in the next video. Take care.